Hello. This isn't a normal video that I make, but something happened. So hi to my audience. Sorry I don't see you as often as I should. Also, hi to Tesla's lawyers. Apparently you watch this stuff. Thanks for the recent shout out and a brief that you filed. That's something I want to talk about today. So before I do that though, let me give a little bit of background to people that are new here. Hi, my name's Mahmood. I'm an engineer that works with autonomous vehicles, and I have been for a few years. I'm pretty passionate about education and trying to make technical things accessible to non-technical people. So the reason for this YouTube channel and all the SciComm stuff that I do is so that I can bring people who don't have a technical background to understand things about autonomous vehicle algorithms and how you design an AI system and things like that. So as part of my, it's not a job, it's something I do in my free time on my own, but people naturally approach me for comment on certain things, and it's not always attributable. Like sometimes reporters reach out, ask me about how a certain thing works. No stupid questions. I'll be happy to answer those sorts of things. And sometimes lawyers reach out when they're doing some due diligence and when they're doing some technical due diligence and trying to understand the gnarly technical details of something, and since that's something I do. So something that recently happened is that the counsel for Walter Huang, which was who was an Apple engineer who tragically who died in 2018 as a result of a fatality while using autopilot. And this is an ongoing case that's happening at the moment. As part of this case, there were a couple of depositions that were not marked confidential, and they were sent to me, and I ended up talking about them because I found them really, really shocking and alarming that I had to tell people about them. So I made a few Twitter threads that went semi-viral. One of the first ones was about Ashok Alaswamy, who's Tesla's head of autopilot software, so pretty high up at Tesla, in charge of the autopilot system. And there's a concept called an operational design domain, which is the conditions under which an automated or a driver assistance system is designed to be operated. So it could be something like you can only operate this on highways or on sunny days or when there isn't traffic around. It's just a description of the conditions under which you can use that function. I'll put a video about this in the description below. When asked about it, what is an operational design domain, he says, I do not know, which is really worrying. Him and the lawyer go back and forth a little bit. He gives him the explanation of what an operational design domain is, and it was all, I don't recall. Tesla doesn't really have a document that talks about an operational design domain, and this person's pretty high up. And I found this really worrying from the perspective of someone who works with these vehicles and is designing systems like this. You kind of need to know the conditions under which you've assumed that these systems are going to be designed. I don't know how you can even make these vehicles or make these systems without having a grasp of that. Then, since autopilot is a driver assistance system, he was asked whether or not he knew what perception reaction time was, and he said that he didn't know that. Perception reaction time is the time between an event happening and a human being able to react to it. So it's about 1.5 to 2.5 seconds for a human that's driving, and that is something that he didn't know or could recall, which is strange for someone making a driver assistance system. But it's just like, okay, like this is something that he lacked knowledge of. I found that pretty shocking. I shared it, and we started speaking about it. Second thing that I spoke about is the Deval Shroff, who's an autopilot engineer at Tesla. He had a deposition where, when asked about does Tesla have a human factors division, he said, I don't know what human factors means, which is really it's a really worrying thing to hear when someone who's creating a system where the driver is supposed to be a critical component of that system, not knowing how human factors play into that, or even what human factors necessarily are. And we saw something similar happen in Ashok's deposition. Basically, he said that if the driver intervenes, that means that the car is doing something wrong. If the driver does not intervene, the interests of autopilot and driver at that point are considered aligned, which sounds perfectly reasonable when you think about it. But then the lawyer points out that based on that definition, auto steer can never malfunction because it's always doing what the driver wants whenever it's engaged. And he asked him if he can think of an example, a hypothetical one, of auto steer malfunctioning, and he couldn't think of one. Basically, that creates this sort of like little loop here where if the car is driving well, the AI is great. And if it's not, then if something bad happened, then it's the driver's fault. And you get into this like weird loop where you can never criticize the technology because all the praise goes to the AI and all the criticism about the bad stuff gets shouldered onto the driver. So you never end up actually criticizing the systems that you built, which is a bias that happens when developing a system, and you need to be aware of that. And then there was another thread that I made that went into a little bit of this ODD term. People said that it was a bit of a gotcha. I was like, okay, sure, that's fine. Let's assume that he never picked up what ODD was, but otherwise he was an engineer that was on top of things. So he's been the director of Autopilot Software since mid-2019. This crash with Walter Huang happened in 2018. As a result of this crash, the NTSB, which is an agency that investigates transport incidents, looked into this crash specifically. This was the second crash, I believe, that they were looking at for Autopilot, and they ended up releasing a report in February 25th of 2020. So about 3/4 of a year into, almost a year into Ashok's tenure as the head of Autopilot Software. Now, if he didn't know what ODD was, he should have picked it up as part of this report. You see it 22 times in the report. It's up there. And this is something he should have picked up. Like, if this is a report he would have read if he was the director of Autopilot Software, and if he came across this term that looks odd, he should have looked into it and understood it so that he could understand the report. So it's something that he should have been aware of. They've also, the NTSB, issued 2 safety recommendations. This happened back in 2016. The first one is to develop applications to more effectively sense the driver's level of engagement and alert the driver when engagement is lacking when automated vehicle control systems are in use. Basically, if a system is pretty good at driving by itself, a human naturally gets complacent as time goes on, and they might not pay attention anymore to what's happening on the road. And that's a foreseeable thing that arises from using these systems. So you need to put in preventative measures to make sure that people don't get into those sorts of accidents. And this is very relevant to this case, but the second recommendation that was reiterated was about incorporating system safeguards that limit the use of automated vehicles control systems to the conditions for which they were designed. Basically, limit the use of autopilot and auto steer to its ODD, like programmatically. Don't let people engage it outside of the conditions for which it was designed. Everyone in the industry, this wasn't just sent to Tesla, this recommendation, it was sent to everyone that develops level 2 systems, and everyone responded except Tesla, who never responded, even though it was their vehicles that did that. This is especially concerning because one of the reasons why Josh Brown died in 2016 was because he was operating his vehicle on a road which autopilot wasn't designed for. Same with Jeremy Banner in 2019, I think. Yeah, in 2019, Jeremy Banner, almost the same accident as Josh Brown, operating the vehicle on a road which the vehicle which the system couldn't really handle. It was not a limited access roadway. Like, what's really worrying about not knowing what an ODD is that it means if ASHOC didn't know what it was, then either they're shredding the reports when they and recommendations when they get them from NTSB, and those reports are never making their way to the engineers, which would be terrible, or the engineers just don't really care about the reports when they get them. They don't hold meetings about debriefs about those or what it is that they're doing, and that is just wild to me. Like, if you got a report and some recommendations about a system and which you were in charge of after someone had died while using it, would you read it? Would you try to understand it? It's not the lack of knowledge there that's shameful, but it's the lack of humanity. Like, if you were not even like a software engineer, if you were like a civil engineer and a bridge that you designed had a fatality that happened on it and a report was written and part of that report went into the design of that bridge and how it contributed to the fatality, would you read that report? I think it would be like a moral duty to be reading that and being familiar with it so that if any lessons can be gleaned, you can take those with you and make sure that future things, at least, even if you are found to not be at fault or responsible for it, take those potential failings into account. That is ethical, reasonable engineering. Anyway, the news didn't really care about any of that, and instead they centered around this, the notion, one of the admittances in the deposition with ASHOC, that the 2016 video, Tesla's Paint It Black video, was staged. And a lot of news sites picked the story up, which was, I was surprised, because this story was already broken in 2017 by Ed Niedermeyer. We knew this, we've known this for a good 6 years or so. But I made a post about that as well, talking about this title screen specifically. The person in the driver's seat is only there for legal reasons. He's not doing anything. The car is driving itself. We found out from Dana Hull and Sean O'Kane's reporting that Elon Musk wrote those words, and and I think these words are a lie. Specifically, he is not doing anything. The car is driving itself. The reason is because when we're talking about driving, we're getting into technical stuff here again. When we're talking about driving from the perspective of automated systems, it's something called the dynamic driving task is like made up of subcomponents of driving. And when someone talks about the levels of autonomy, video linked below, but basically when someone talks about the levels of autonomy from 0 to 5, each level hands over one aspect of the driving task from the human over to the automated system. So at level 0, the human does everything. At level 1, which is like cruise control, the automated system does either driving or steering, usually just like acceleration braking. Level 2, which is what Tesla systems are at, both acceleration braking and steering are taken over by the system. But this third component, OEDR, or object and event detection and recognition, isn't. And that is just a fancy way of saying, can you handle if something steps out in your way, or if a lane is closed? Can you deal with those events that arise, events and objects that arise while you're driving? Can you recognize those? And with level 2 systems, you may be able to recognize some, but the automated system might be able to recognize some, but not necessarily everything. It doesn't have full OEDR coverage, but level 3 does. So with a level 3 system, if you get involved in an accident when you're operating the system, then that's the manufacturer's liability. They're the ones who should be responsible for that. But with level 2 systems, the vehicle admittedly doesn't know that it's about to get into a dangerous situation. The OEDR component is really, really super important. It is absolutely critical, because this is what prevents you from getting into crashes with people. And the claim that he's not doing anything is sort of like saying that a smoke detector is only there for legal reasons and not doing anything when there isn't a fire. But it's there, and it's constantly detecting for smoke, and it only fires off when smoke happens. That is a very rare thing that happens. But in this case, we know that there were 550 miles driven to make that video, and 168 times the vehicle had to be disengaged by the driver because it was getting into a situation that was dangerous. And they had to try 168 different times before they ended up getting the full shot. And that is, I think that makes the claim that the driver's not doing anything I think that's really dubious. I don't think that is an accurate portrayal of what the driver's task is at that moment in time. Now, these documents I'm going to talk about are publicly accessible. You can access them by going to traffic.scscourt.org and searching for them. Now, this is a brief or a motion. I'm not a lawyer. It's a thing that lawyers had written that was written by Tesla's lawyers for the Tesla's lawyers in this case with Walter Huang. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to make all past and future depositions as part of this case marked as confidential, even though they weren't marked as confidential before. They don't like that people have been reading and knowing about the sorts of stuff that have been going on here. So that's what they're trying to do here. And in here, they mentioned me. So hi, nice to see you guys. The transcript posted publicly on Twitter by me. His Twitter posts include screen captures of small portions of testimony regarding a concept entirely irrelevant for Level 2 Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, which I was pretty shocked to read that. They also printed off my Twitter, like on paper, and then scanned it in. I guess they didn't want a screenshot. But anyway, this is a weird sentence. It's very shocking. It is like, so with Ashok's deposition, people can argue that he was put on the spot and maybe he clammed up and didn't know what an operational design domain was, even though he should definitely know what that is. But that can be argued. In this case, this is a reasoned, thought out, and considered statement from Tesla's counsel that they've had a think about, and this is the position that they have, that a concept, i.e. the operational design domain, is entirely irrelevant for Level 2 Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, which is something that I've never heard Tesla say. I've never heard anyone at Tesla say that the ODD is entirely irrelevant for Level 2 systems. That is a bonkers thing to say. And I am going to tell you why. So, there's something called SAE J3016. I spoke about this before. This is the standard that defines the levels, level 0 to level 5. Also, I happen to be one of the members of the task force, so I contribute to this document, and I know this document really well. It's 41 pages long. You can download it from the SAE website. It's free. Yeah, you just need to make an account. But part of this, they define what an ODD is, and they say that an ODD are the operating conditions under which a given driving automation system or features are specifically designed to function, which include things like environmental, geographical, time of day restrictions, or like the presence or absence of traffic or roadway characteristics. Exactly what we said before, like the conditions under which this system can operate. And here it says it gives an example of a level 1 system. A level 1 adaptive cruise control driver support feature is designed to provide longitudinal, that's acceleration braking, vehicle motion control support to the driver on fully access-controlled freeways under fair weather conditions. They're describing the type of roadway and the type of weather conditions that happen and what elements of the dynamic driving task it's taken over. So that's a pretty good description of a level 1 system. So pretty relevant, not entirely irrelevant. Pretty relevant to a level 1 system. User specification, so a particular level of driving automation within a particular ODD. So, for example, a level 2 feature provides lateral and longitudinal vehicle motion control support to the driver on fully access-controlled freeways, which a level 2 feature would be something like, I don't know, like autopilot with auto steer. Now, I'm used to talking to people like Tesla people on Twitter who have never read the manuals, and why would you? It's like 300, almost 300 pages long. It's a slog to get through. But I was really surprised by this comment of being entirely irrelevant. Because if you go to page 88, which is where auto steer is, and you zoom in on this one paragraph in this 250 page document, you say that auto steer is intended for use on highways and limited access roads with a fully attentive driver. Do not use auto steer on city streets, in construction zones, or in areas where bicyclists or pedestrians may be present. I don't know about you, but to me, those sounds like conditions under which a given driving automation system or feature is specifically designed to function, including the requisite presence or absence of certain conditions, which is a really really weird thing. It's written there. The ODD, they have it. Tesla's ODD is written in the manual, but the engineers and the lawyers and the people who work at Tesla don't really reference it or see it as something relevant. The systems are being built without the people building the systems knowing about this stuff, which is bonkers to me as someone who builds systems like this. It is so irregular for this to happen. Now, I was just completely taken aback. I really didn't think that they'd say the quiet part out loud, that they don't see that the ODD is a critical component of a level 2 system, but it totally is. Like, there's a table here that describes all the different levels here. Level 2, partial driving automation. The ODD, limited. Like, the ODD is a critical component of all the levels of driving automation. Like, it's there, it's relevant. This is a factually incorrect statement. And for them to be saying that, I don't know who they're talking, like, have they gone out and spoken to people in the industry, or are they only talking to people within Tesla to get an understanding of how these systems are built? It's just something else. Anyway, one of the reasons that they had for saying that, wanting to turn everything confidential, is that these are attempts at tainting the jury pool, where people are reading the tweets that I've written, or people are reading the articles that are being written out there, and it's going to turn people against Tesla, essentially, because it's critical of Tesla. But Tesla have been tainting the jury pool for years. They have been so there's this really good paper from Liza Dixon, I'll link it below, called Autonowashing. It introduces the concept of autonowashing, which is like greenwashing, but for making things seem more autonomous than they actually are. So she says that we need to trust automated systems as much as their capabilities are. And that's where you get this calibrated trust. If you trust the automated system as much as it's capable, then you're in the good zone. You're in the calibrated trust, optimal zone. If you don't trust it, if you trust it less than what it's capable of doing, then you end up not using the system and getting the benefits of the automation, which is not great. But if you end up over-trusting the system, which is what autonowashing does, it makes people put in too much faith in a system that doesn't quite reach a level that warrants that level of faith and trust. You get into this overtrust territory, which is where people become complacent and they put the vehicle into situations which they shouldn't really be putting the vehicle, because nothing's gone wrong in the past. So they think it's going to be great. Or Elon says it's going to be level 5 at the end of this year. So it's almost there. It's just regulators that are standing in the way. And that's when you get people over-trusting systems, and really tragic things end up happening. And this has happened over and over again. Enough to have, like, recommendations be reiterated over and over again. And as someone who's in this industry, I've spoken to like regulators, policy people, potential clients all over the world. And there is so much groundwork that needs to be put in sometimes at dragging people back from this overtrust area to have realistic expectations of what the technology is. I'm a very strong believer in this technology. I want autonomous vehicles to happen. I think that they're gonna make things a lot safer, and there are lots of interesting applications that you could put them in that increases efficiency on the road and brings access to people. I want this technology to happen, but the danger of allowing your communication to put people in that overtrust sector means that accidents or crashes are going to end up happening. And when those happen, they're not going to be thought of as like Tesla accidents. They're going to be thought of as autonomous vehicle crashes in general. And people will end up distrusting that technology as a result of accidents or crashes that have happened due to overtrust. And that is the tragedy of autono-washing. It's when you're pushing a system, when you believe in a system so much that you push it beyond, you push the faith in it beyond where its capabilities are, you end up creating a situation which risks the future of that system altogether. And that's something I definitely don't want to happen, and one of the reasons that I started this channel. And again, it's not that like Tesla doesn't understand that concepts like ODD or human factors, but it's the lack of caring about the impact that these sorts of systems have on people. And I think that's the real tragedy here. I am just absolutely gobsmacked that we have a company like Tesla who showed such promise and potential and capability early on. Like it was a golden child, make so many bad decisions and integrate so much bad culture that it becomes systemic, that now they are a case study of the worst and most negligent way to go about developing this technology. And I really resent that. I wish that they did things better, because they're such a visible example of this industry. But the fact that they don't ends up putting this entire industry at risk. And they've essentially poisoned the jury pool, or they have been, for almost a decade now. And I'm trying to stop it with this YouTube channel, but I don't know how much impact I can make here. I'm trying. It's just really disappointing. Like it's a disappointing thing that I wish wasn't true, but it is. Anyway, it's rambling. It's 2:00 in the morning. I need to go to sleep. But thanks for watching. Links in the description below. I promise they're interesting. Bye-bye. Don't build driving assisted systems without respect for the operational design domain.